to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Gillian Rightford, the CEO of AdTherapy. And Gillian was thrown into the deep end as an MD of an agency years ago when she helped form Hercules DMB&B. And she says at that stage she didn't know what she was doing, to such an extent that she woke up almost like nauseous in the morning and had to ask people like, what do I do as an MD? Gillian is an entrepreneur in her own right today. She understands the tough, lonely road of entrepreneurship. And she lives mostly outside of her comfort zone. And she sees a bigger single asset as an incredible network of colleagues and friends. So, I mean, Gillian is a big Twitter buddy of mine. And so let's say, welcome to my Twitter buddy, Gillian Rightford. And she'll be sharing her insight on client and agency relationship. Welcome, Gillian.
Okay, so the client-agency relationship, is it a love affair or is it destined for divorce? There are certainly a number of similarities from the first glance to the first date, the chemistry meeting, to finding a partner that you want to commit to for long-term success and growth, to celebrating that commitment, obviously with French champagne, nothing less, to a public declaration of your long-term commitment to each other. The beginning days are heady, that's a honeymoon, and there's a lot of happiness. There's good times, you're doing work, you're unearthing all sorts of creativity, and it's seemingly the most wonderful partnership. And then things maybe start feeling like they're going a little bit out of control. And what starts to happen is that anxiety sets in, limitations start happening, and there's a lot of hand-holding and a lot of heartfelt conversations, possibly even with some therapy. But you're going to make it, right? It's going to be great. Like, you committed. You were destined to be together. Well, maybe not. There's a good chance that maybe you just were the wrong fit in the beginning, that you weren't actually right for each other from the very start. But what normally happens is actually that there is some kind of little festering something that's not quite right and it's not dealt with. And that actually sets up a path to failure, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. I do agency client interventions, and I go in and I speak to people on both sides, and I try and get to really what's going on, which is why my business is called AdTherapy. There is lots of that. And I thought I would just show you some of the words that come out, because it always amazes me the depth of feeling to what Anne was talking about, what our unconscious is telling us about how we feel about this relationship. So I'm going to paint you a couple of words. These were from an agency. These were the client. They're not exactly words you'd expect from a great marriage. So I want to suggest that it's time for a new narrative. I think that the marriage analogy is a limiting construct. And the reason why I think that is it suggests that compromise is necessary to keep each other happy. It's based on the notion that advertising is a service business. But in fact, advertising agencies sell a product. And the effectiveness of the product, creative advertising, is no longer in any doubt. Andy has spoken to it. A number of people have spoken to it. Keith Weed, who's the CMO of Unilever, said this recently. He said that leading brands and agencies have known for many years that more creative work delivers better results than safe and rational advertising. More creative work delivers better results than safe and rational advertising. What has been exciting in times is the emerging proof of this. The hard evidence that creative work is more memorable, more effective, and more able to drive overall business performance. Andy referenced this, Catherine referenced this. We know this. Creative campaigns deliver up to 11 times return on investment on a big budget, 27 times on a small budget. I did not know this. This came out of the Les Binet and Peter Field work recently, that creative campaigns are 12 times more effective now compared to 3 times in 2002. This is a business imperative. We've got to be doing this. But if it works, and we know it works, and it's what we all want, why is there still the disconnect? And the reason why is it comes down to risk-taking, it comes down to trust. Those fun things that we promised each other in the beginning of our relationship aren't that easy to do now that we are actually, the rubber is meeting the road. Like in all relationships, trust is the center. And again, I think Andy references that actually we're trusting the wrong thing. We're scared of the wrong thing. We assume that taking a risk is buying creative work. In fact, the risk is on buying mediocre work. So that is the risky option. We should be actually trusting the creative work more than we do, because it's more certain to achieve results. So when I talk about this stuff, people say, yes, Gillian, but what is creative? I mean, it's subjective. How do we know? Well, the truth is that there's a lot of evidence about what actually constitutes great creative. And you can go and look for this in many sources. The case for creativity is one of them. What they define is originality, engagement, and execution. There are other things that your company should agree on. You should have a standard to by which you live. So let's just go back to the therapy bit for a little bit and say, okay, so we're in this therapy situation. Things aren't really working out. So what do we do? How can we fix this? What are the elements we need to look at? So luckily for us, the IPA, which is the Institute of Practitioners of Advertising, has done some work, and they've discovered that we have 3 areas, procedural, professional, and psychological, that we have to bring to the table. Within those things, the 4 drivers are these things: approvals, mutual timings, brief writings, oh my hat, that needs improvement, and respect and collaboration. But it's actually this last area, the psychological area, that makes these relationships come unstuck. And what they looked at when they were looking into this whole work was they went back to transactional analysis. And they said that, this is a theory from the 60s, that we each have ego states. There's 6 ego states that we have, there are only 5 there, but controlling parent, nurturing parent, functional adult, and the 2 children. And we assume these things show up in different ways with different people in different situations. But we assume in a marriage we've got 2 functional adults negotiating with each other. But in actual fact, in this relationship, as well as in all relationships, there are other dynamics at play. There is the controlling parent who is dealing with the creative child. And I want you just to listen to what Dr. Eric Byrne, who actually came up with the theory, has to say about what that does.
The child is the spontaneous part of the personality, which is creative, which sees things in a naive, rather charming way, and which asks very pertinent questions. And then the child gradually gets snowed under, mostly by the parents, and starts accepting answers which are not straight, or forgetting questions which would be interesting because you're not supposed to ask them. And that's how the child gets corrupted.
So what we're doing there is we're shutting down the curiosity and the creativity that we're paying for. I talk about the creative tap. Eventually, the creative tap is closed. You want the tap open. Eventually, after being controlling, the tap is closed, and you get statements like, just give them what they want. Let's just get it out. It costs the same. Sometimes it costs more. I love this quote from my other Twitter friend, Richard Shotton. As John Ward of England's B&B Dorland noted, advertising is a craft executed by people who aspire to be artists, but assessed by those who aspire to be scientists. I cannot imagine any human relationship more perfectly designed to produce total mayhem. So the other thing that just to put on the table in terms of these dynamics is what happens when we add procurement into the mix. And the research that they've done here is what procurement does is it creates a triangular relationship, and which leaves the other 2 parties at the risk of psychological game playing. It's not good. The last point on this little slide is just to think about the actual differences in age and experience. We've spoken a little bit about it. Bongani mentioned the ages of people that we're talking to, and both senior marketing expertise and younger advertising expertise are valuable. We've got to find a way to find common ground. So what do we need? Maybe we need a new set of vows. And again, the IPA worked with this lady, Julie Hare, who works on psychological intelligence, and she proposed a set of new relationship contract. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm just going to say, we confirm our mutual commitment to interacting in ways that build to mutually beneficial outcomes. We will be cognizant of psychological dynamics at play in our relationship, and we will act on them, whether they're positive or negative. We will learn from each other and foster a culture of curiosity and growth. We will trust each other and know that not taking risks is riskier than taking them. And I'm happy to email these to you if you would like. The chief objective of a good partnership between an agency and a brand team is to get the best creative output into the market. That's it. It's not to play golf on Saturdays. It's to get the best creative output into the market. And this comes from working together in an open and a safe way. Because the creation of commercial creativity, which is an important phrase, is subjective, it's subject to many layers and stakeholders within the business, as to what Greg was saying in terms of the credibility of marketers within an organization. Sometimes selling in perceived risky work is extremely hard. So conflicts are unavoidable, but it's how we as partners deal with those conflicts and how we mutually aim to resolve them that is the important thing. And here's why it's important. Some research that was done by Appraise with 10,000 participants in the marketing community found that there's as much as a 37% differential in the quality of output. Now, we know that the quality output produces better results. You can get for free 37% better quality if you have a better relationship. What's not to love? So, as Frank Lowe said, it's because things are tough that people aren't taking risks, and it's because people aren't taking risks that things are tough. The real risk of the relationship is that it makes boring work that nobody sees. And no matter whose fault it is, it will certainly end in divorce. So what's to be done? Double down on those relationship vows. Focus on the product, not the compromises that will keep you happy. And the last thought is just that I read a lovely article the other day that creative excellence is actually operates on the gift-giving theory, which is that we are gifting our consumers with something interesting, something entertaining, something valuable. And in return, they are gifting us with their attention. They're gifting us with their money or their behavior change. So instead, maybe instead of worrying about our incentives or our remuneration, maybe what we should all be doing is considering our mutual consumer and gifting them with creative excellence. And that way, everybody wins. Thank you.